This video explains the various forecast statuses within the foreCASH software program. foreCASH trial software has all features enabled. If you find some menu options are greyed out or locked, then please check the current status of your forecast. The following slides will explain all about the status. The upper part of this screen shows a typical view when you open a forecast company within foreCASH. In the area below the main menu, you'll see three different statuses shown. Currently, the status is Cashflow calculation pending. In general, the guide is that you'd work through the menu options from left to right. However, not all forecast menu options are available. Those that are available depend upon the current status of the forecast. We'll look now at forecast status 1, that of Cashflow calculation pending. When the Cashflow calculation is pending, you'll find that almost all menu options are available. Towards the left-hand side, you can see the bank setup, drivers and key accounts. These are areas that you tend to go in the first time you use foreCASH to make sure, for example, the credit terms for customers and suppliers have been set up as the correct default. Further across, you can see some expanded menu options, including opening data, where, for example, you might confirm the amount of fixed assets, opening debtors, opening creditors, and tax liabilities. Also expanded is the forecast data menu option, where we're entering information about the future, whereby you can enter your sales and stock forecast into the future, direct costs, the rate of overheads, and other expenses. The last entries that have been highlighted on these two expanded menu options are opening balance sheet summary and operating profit summary. And we'll look now in more detail at what those are. The operating profit report gives a preview of sales, margins, and other overheads that you've entered into your forecast. At this stage, foreCASH hasn't done a detailed cash flow calculation or a balance sheet calculation into the future. And for that reason, we don't know exactly what interest charges will occur. The report therefore stops at the EBIT, earnings before interest and tax line. foreCASH gives you the option of using Excel data feeds. For example, you could have some sales figures in a spreadsheet which foreCASH will look at in order to generate the sales forecast. Each time you view the operating profit forecast, any data feeds will be refreshed and updated to the latest figures. The right-hand image on this screen shows a summary opening balance sheet. Again, it's only the opening balance sheet because at this stage we haven't done a detailed cash flow calculation and worked out, for example, the precise levels of debtors and creditors several months into the future. We'll look now at when the status changes from cash flow calculation pending into cash flow calculation run. You can run the calculation either from the button alongside the forecast status or from the main menu option, which is shown expanded above. When you run the calculation, any Excel data feeds will be updated. Once the calculation is run, foreCASH has produced the full monthly profit and loss, now including interest charges and corporation tax, a monthly balance sheet, a funds flow forecast, and also a monthly cash flow forecast, together with the weekly and daily cash flow forecasts. You can switch between the monthly, weekly, and daily views. And once you've finished exploring the forecast and exporting any reports you want to look at, you have the option to close the view. When you close the view, you'll return to the forecast status screen. You can see now on the forecast status screen that we've moved from the first to the second level of the statuses. If you close foreCASH entirely, or perhaps switch to look at another company forecast, the status where you'd previously run the cash flow calculation will be retained and will still be cash flow calculation run, no management actions. You then have the choice to come back into the forecast detail by clicking on the redisplay cash flow button and reviewing again the forecast that you had produced previously. You can then continue to review the forecast or export additional reports for sharing with other staff members or, for example, to lenders. When you redisplay the cash flow forecast, you will always see the same numbers as you did the last time you went in. If you do have Excel data feeds, they're not updated when the forecast is redisplayed. They'll continue to use the feed values at the time that the forecast calculation was run. This, in effect, gives you some control over preventing data feeds being updated into the forecast when you don't want them to be. Managing cash flow is a critical task, and if, for example, you had a sales forecast sheet provided by another member of staff and they had been making some changes, you may not want those to immediately flow into your forecast if you'd settled upon a set forecast and were wanting to continue to issue reports to bankers or lenders. The other key factor is you can produce a new forecast every month and perhaps update with actuals or change the outlook on some costs. At the same time, you'll wish to have the option to go back and look at the previous month's or the month's forecast before that. So again, it's critical that those data feeds aren't being updated and distorting some numbers that you'd already issued or relied upon. It means the forecast remains fixed, so you've got the detail there to go back and look at in the future if you wish. Forecasting can often be an iterative process, and the first time you run the cash flow calculation, you'll probably find that the cash flow pattern or the balance sheet doesn't look quite as you'd expect, and you want to go back and fine-tune some of the parameters that you've set, for example, the collection of debtors profile. In order to do that, you can press the Clear Cash Flow Calc and Amend Based Data button in order that you can get full access to the drivers, key accounts, opening data and forecast data menus. You shouldn't therefore be unduly concerned about moving from Status 2 back to Status 1. The other feature of moving back from cash flow calculation, no management actions, to calculation pending is that at that point the Excel data feeds will start to refresh. So again, if having reviewed your forecast you feel like the figures weren't quite right and you wanted to amend the numbers flowing through from a data feed, from an Excel data feed, then you could clear the cash flow calculation, rerun the calculation, and any changes in the underlying spreadsheets would at that point be brought through. We'll think now about when the forecast would move from the second status to the third status. Cash flow calculation run, management actions exist. Management actions fall into two categories. They can either be the manual rescheduling of a payment, which can be done via the daily cash flow report, either by dragging and dropping a payment or using some right-click menu options to defer, spread or advance payments. Or secondly, by using the flex sales or flex stock option, which is activated by using the main menu at the top of the screen. If you'd carried out some management actions within your forecast, for example by dragging and dropping a payment, then when you close the view from the detailed forecast sheets, you'll see that the forecast status is now at the third level. Cash flow calculation run, management actions exist, and below that a note of the type of management actions which are present in this forecast. If you want to review the detailed forecast output of the monthly management reports or the weekly or daily cash flow, again you have the option of using the redisplay cash flow calculation button to drive into the main forecast reports. When you redisplay the cash flow, the Excel data feeds are not updated, and you'll see whatever figures you saw the last time you went into the forecast. While moving between status 1 and status 2 is an iterative process, the same is not true of moving from status 3 back to status 1. Users should continue to move between status 1 and status 2 until they're completely happy with their forecast and they have a genuine base position which they consider to be a best estimate. Now, if that best estimate should identify some cash drain, then foreCASH offers the management actions features in able to help manage that cash drain. For example, dragging and dropping a payment to defer when it will hit your cash flow is a very precise management action, which is a manipulation of what the genuine to terms cash flow forecast would be. That level of detail cannot be retained by foreCASH if you then choose to clear down the management actions and make significant changes to the base forecast. Therefore, if you do clear management actions, they are permanently lost. However, the base forecast with the original sales, overheads and opening data is retained. If you do find you're in a position where you need to clear down management actions and amend base data, two things are recommended. One is to make a copy of the version of the forecast, so if need be you can go back in and review before the clear down was made. And secondly, you can run a report detailing all the manual rescheduling so that if you wish you can re-input it once you've made other changes to the base data. But again, hopefully you won't ever get to that situation because your level 2 status 2 forecast will have been complete and included all relevant elements. To summarize, there are 3 different statuses for a forecast within the foreCASH program. The first status is pre a detailed cash flow calculation. At this stage you have full access to the opening data and forecast data menu options. To check you've added all the relevant sales and costs into your forecast, you can use the operating profit preview. You also have the opening balance sheet so you can ensure your opening position for the forecast is correct. At this stage, any Excel data feeds are refreshed whenever you preview the operating profit. When ready, you can run the detailed cash flow calculation and move to status 2. The Excel data feeds are updated as this calculation is run. In addition to the cash flow reports, this also generates the future balance sheet and funds flow forecasts. Once in status 2, values from Excel data feeds are frozen. You'll find you move from status 1 to status 2 a number of times as you refine the forecast and you are happy with the forecast as a good model of P&L and cash flow when paying suppliers to terms. Now, as well as being a cash forecasting tool, foreCASH contains cash management options. Once you have a robust forecast in status 2, you have the option to use drag drop and other rescheduling options to manage any cash drain. But note, this is a final refinement process. If you should need to move back to status 1, you will lose any management actions. If you need any further assistance, then please contact us by email or phone. Thank you for watching.